There comes a moment in life when you stop chasing everyone's approval and start protecting your peace. Because not everyone who walks with you is meant to stay with you, and not everyone who leaves is a loss. The strongest people are not those surrounded by the most people, but those who have learned the courage to stand alone when necessary. This is where real growth begins. Not everyone deserves access to your life, because access is not just physical presence, it is emotional influence, mental space, and spiritual impact. In life, there are people who enter quietly but leave chaos behind, and there are people who stay loudly but never truly support your growth. Islam teaches us the importance of safeguarding our hearts, because the heart is not just a feeling, it is a trust from Allah, something that must be protected from anything that weakens faith, disturbs peace, or pulls us away from righteousness. When you allow everyone into your inner circle without discernment, you slowly begin to lose parts of yourself without even noticing it. Your thoughts become scattered, your intentions become unclear, and your energy becomes consumed by voices that were never meant to guide your path. Emotional pain often begins not from enemies, but from those we gave too much access to, those we trusted without boundaries, those we allowed to see our vulnerability without understanding their intentions. And sometimes Allah removes people from your life not as punishment, but as protection, because He knows what your heart cannot yet understand. He knows what your eyes refuse to see. And He knows what your future requires that your past cannot carry. There is wisdom in separation, there is mercy in distance, and there is hidden protection in being misunderstood by the wrong people. Not everyone who smiles with you is meant to stand with you, and not everyone who listens to your words is safe with your secrets. Some people are tests, some are lessons, and some are distractions that delay your growth. The deeper you walk in self-awareness, the more you realize that peace is a form of worship, and protecting your peace is part of protecting your Iman. Because a disturbed heart cannot fully focus on gratitude, prayer, or purpose. Emotional triggers in life often come from repeated exposure to the wrong energies, the wrong conversations, the wrong environments that slowly weaken your inner strength until you forget who you were before the noise entered your life. And yet, within all of this, there is a divine reminder that Allah never takes something away except to replace it with something better. Even if the replacement is not immediately visible to the human eye, even if the wisdom is hidden behind pain, even if the heart struggles to accept the silence that follows separation distance from the wrong people, is protection, not punishment, because what feels like separation to the heart is often preservation in the sight of destiny. In life, we naturally attach meaning to loss and assume that every departure is a wound. But not every exit is meant to break you. Some are meant to save you from becoming something you were never meant to be. There are people whose presence drains your energy, clouds your judgment, and slowly shifts your focus away from your purpose. And when they leave, the emptiness you feel is only the silence of what was once disturbance. Islam teaches that Allah is Al-Hakim, the most wise, and His decisions are never random. Even when people walk away, even when doors close unexpectedly, even when relationships fade without explanation. There is divine protection hidden in what the heart initially interprets as loss. Sometimes Allah distances you from people not because you are unworthy of them, but because your soul is being guarded from influences that could weaken your faith, disturb your peace, or delay your growth. Emotionally, it feels painful because attachment makes us blind to reality, but spiritually, it is a redirection towards something purer, something calmer, something more aligned with the person you are becoming. Many times, we cry over endings that are actually rescues in disguise, and we beg for returns that would have led us back into cycles of stress, confusion, and self-neglect. The heart struggles because it sees memories, but wisdom sees consequences, and what feels like loneliness is often space being created for clarity, strength, and renewed reliance upon Allah. In that distance, you begin to rediscover yourself without external noise, you begin to understand your worth without validation, and you begin to rebuild your identity on foundations that are not dependent on unstable connections. And slowly, what once felt like rejection transforms into realization. Because not every absence is a void, some are shields placed between you and what could have broken you quietly from within peace, is more valuable than popularity, because popularity feeds the ego for a moment, but peace nourishes the soul for a lifetime. Popularity often comes with noise, expectations, comparisons, judgments, and the constant pressure of being seen, approved, and validated by people who may not even understand your inner struggle. But peace is different. It is quiet, it is steady, and it does not demand performance. It allows you to breathe without pretending, to live without fear of opinions, and to exist without constantly seeking acceptance from others. In the eyes of Islam, peace of heart is a great blessing because true peace is connected to remembrance of Allah. When the heart is attached to people's approval, it becomes restless, always chasing recognition that never truly satisfies. But when the heart turns toward Allah, it finds a calm that the world cannot offer and cannot take away. That is why many people who gain popularity still feel empty inside, because attention does not equal contentment, and recognition does not equal fulfillment. Emotionally, popularity can become a trap. It makes you adjust your personality to fit expectations, hide your struggles behind a smile, and measure your worth by how others respond to you. But peace frees you from all of that. It teaches you that you do not need to be understood by everyone to feel whole. It teaches you that not every opinion deserves your attention, and not every voice deserves your response. There is a deep relief in letting go of the need to impress, because the energy you once spent on approval becomes available for growth, reflection, and self-respect. Many people lose themselves while trying to be liked by everyone, but those who choose peace begin to find themselves again. They stop chasing crowds and start protecting their silence. They stop performing for acceptance and start living with intention. And in that space, life becomes clearer, the heart becomes lighter, and the soul becomes stronger, not because the world became easier, but because the need to please the world was finally released. Your future requires space that the wrong people occupy, because growth does not only depend on effort, it depends on what you remove from your life as much as what you build within it. Every person in your circle is not just a presence, they are an influence. And influence always shapes direction, whether you notice it or not. Some people do not block your path directly, but they occupy your mental space, your emotional energy, and your time in ways that silently delay your progress. And the hardest truth is that what is familiar is not always what is right, and what feels comfortable is not always what is meant for your future. In the light of Islam, time and intention are amana, a trust, and how you spend both will be accounted for. When you allow the wrong people to take up space that should be reserved for your discipline, you are essentially saying that your discipline is not important enough to be respected. Your goals and your connection with Allah, you slowly drift away from your own potential. Not because you are incapable, but because your energy is being scattered across places that were never aligned with your purpose. Allah does not guide a heart that is constantly pulled in different directions by distractions and emotional attachments that weaken clarity and focus. Emotionally, this realization can be painful because it requires honesty with yourself. It means accepting that some relationships are not just unhelpful, they are limiting. They keep you repeating the same conversations, the same habits, the same mindset, while your destiny is asking you to evolve. And evolution requires space. You cannot step into a new version of yourself while still carrying people who belong to your old patterns, your old decisions, your old environment. There is a silent struggle within every human being between attachment and advancement. Attachment says stay where you are known, even if you are not growing. Advancement says release what is familiar so you can rise into what is unfamiliar but meaningful. And often the wrong people do not leave loudly, they remain quietly, occupying your attention, delaying your focus, and keeping you emotionally tied to cycles that no longer serve your journey. But when you begin to understand your worth, you start to guard your space like something sacred. You become more selective with your energy, more intentional with your time, and more aware of what pulls you away from your purpose. Because deep down, you realize that your future is not built in overcrowded spaces, it is built in clarity, discipline, and the courage to let go of what no longer aligns with where Allah is taking you. Growth demands separation from old environments, because transformation is not just about adding new habit set, it is about removing what no longer aligns with the person you are becoming. A seed cannot grow while still buried in the soil that has already fulfilled its purpose. It must break through, leave behind the darkness it once depended on, and reach toward a new space where light allows it to develop. In the same way, a human being cannot evolve while still fully immersed in environments that were designed for their past, not their future. Many people stay stuck not because they lack ability, but because they remain surrounded by the same energy, the same conversations, the same influences that shape their old identity. Old environments carry old patterns, and old patterns produce old results. And if a person keeps repeating the same surroundings, they unknowingly keep repeating the same version of themselves. Growth requires interruption of that cycle. It requires stepping away from what feels familiar so something unfamiliar but necessary can begin to take shape. In Islamic understanding, change is deeply connected with intention and action. Allah does not change the condition of a people until they change what is within themselves, and that inner change often starts with external separation. Sometimes Allah removes you from an environment not as punishment, but as preparation, because certain surroundings are too small for the destiny He has written for you. What once felt normal begins to feel limiting, not because the environment changed, but because you did. Emotionally, this process can feel like loss. Leaving behind people, places, and habits creates a sense of emptiness at first because the mind confuses familiarity with safety. But not every familiar space is safe for your growth. Some environments keep you emotionally stagnant, mentally distracted, and spiritually disconnected from your higher purpose. And the longer you remain in them, the more difficult it becomes to recognize the version of yourself you were meant to become. Separation is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet awareness. You begin to feel out of place in conversations you once enjoyed. You lose interest in habits that once defined you. You start questioning what used to feel normal. This discomfort is not a sign of failure, it is a sign of evolution. It is the soul outgrowing its surroundings, searching for alignment with something greater, simpler. And in that space of separation, clarity begins to enter. You start to see yourself differently, think differently, and choose differently. You realize that growth was never about staying comfortable, it was about having the courage to leave behind what keeps you. Small, so you can step into what was always meant to expand you. Silence reveals who truly values you because words are easy, but consistency is tested when attention is no longer demanded and presence is no longer forced. When life becomes quiet, when you stop initiating conversations, stop chasing explanations, stop being available for everyone, you begin to see the reality that noise once covered. Some people stay only where there is constant interaction, constant effort, and constant giving from your side. But when your silence enters the space, their absence speaks louder than anything they ever said. Simpler. In silence, illusions fade. The people who are only present for convenience slowly disappear, and those who are truly connected to your presence remain even without pressure, without reminders, without demands. It is in these quiet moments that truth becomes visible. Not the truth people speak, but the truth they live. Because genuine value does not require constant access, it remains steady even when communication is not. From a spiritual perspective in Islam, silence also brings clarity to the heart. When external voices reduce, the heart becomes more aware of what is real and what is superficial. It is in stillness that Allah often shows you the reality of relationships, not through loud endings, but through quiet revelations. People drift away without effort, and others stay without needing explanation. And in that unfolding, you begin to understand that not every connection was meant to last, and not every absence is a loss. Simpler. Emotionally, silence can feel uncomfortable at first because the mind is used to measuring its worth through responses, attention, and validation. But when those responses stop coming, you are forced to face a deeper truth. Who values you beyond your availability, and who only valued what you were providing? This realization can be painful, but it is also freeing because it removes illusions that kept you emotionally invested in one-sided connections. Simpler. Silence becomes a mirror. It reflects who appreciates your presence without needing constant proof, and who disappears when effort is no longer one-sided. It exposes intentions that were once hidden behind words, and it clears space for sincerity to reveal itself without interference. And in that quiet exposure, you begin to understand that real value does not need to be tested at, remains visible even in absence, even in distance, even in stillness. The right people will never require you to lose yourself because true connection does not demand self-abandonment, it supports self-expression. When a relationship is aligned with your growth, you do not feel pressured to shrink your personality, silence your values, or reshape your identity just to be accepted. Instead, you feel safe to exist as you are while still becoming better. The wrong connections often come with invisible conditions. Be more like this, act less like that, adjust yourself so you can be accepted. Simpler. Over time, those conditions slowly pull you away from your authenticity until you forget what was real about you in the first place. Simpler. From a spiritual perspective in Islam, every soul is created with dignity and uniqueness, and no bond that is truly righteous should require you to compromise your faith, your values, or your connection with Allah. When a relationship pulls you away from truth, peace, or discipline, it is not alignment, it is distraction. The heart that is meant to be guided toward goodness will never find peace in environments that constantly force it to change into something unrecognizable. Allah does not bring people into your life to strip you of who you are, but to refine you without destroying your essence. Simpler. Emotionally, losing yourself often happens gradually. It does not begin with a big decision, but with small Compromise is saying yes when you mean no. Staying quiet when you want to speak. Ignoring your instincts to keep someone comfortable. Slowly, your boundaries weaken, your voice becomes softer, and your identity becomes shaped more by others than by your own understanding of yourself. This is where imbalance begins, because any connection that requires you to repeatedly abandon your truth is not a place of growth, it is a place of erosion. The right people feel different. You do not have to perform for them. You do not have to prove your worth repeatedly. You do not have to adjust your core values just to maintain their presence. Instead, they allow space for honesty, respect for individuality, and encouragement for growth without pressure to become someone else. With them, you do not feel divided, you feel integrated. Your identity does not fracture, it strengthens. Simpler. And over time, you begin to understand a deeper truth. Real belonging does not require self-loss. It allows you to stand fully in who you are while still being valued, still being respected, and still being accepted without conditions that cost your authenticity. So stop trying to keep everybody. Some doors are meant to close. Some people are meant to exit. And some spaces are meant to be empty so something greater can enter. Protect your peace like it is your future, because it is.